Waller County, Texas, 2023. Less than 2 weeks after New Year's, the local police department received a chilling phone call.
Waller County 911.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Rodney Dicus. I need an ambulance and police at 2060 College Boulevard.
Okay, what's going on?
I don't know everything, but my son's wife is dead.
Jared James Dicus and Anggy Diaz were both 21. They'd gotten married in October 2022, less than 3 months earlier. And in their photos, they were all smiles, excited to begin a life together. But that was then. This was now.
No, she's down and there's no head on her body.
The couple lived in a house on Jared's parents' property. In the afternoon of January 11th, his parents had gone over to the house to check on Anggy. What they found was something no one should ever have to see, and certainly never have to go through. Anggy was dead on the floor, and her head had been cut off. Terrified that such a horrific crime had occurred so close to home, the Dicus called the police, and when the police arrived, the carefully put together image of a perfect relationship began to fall apart. Jared and Angie's new marriage had ended in murder, and it was Jared's parents who discovered the body. What had gone so catastrophically wrong? So was it Jared? And if it was, then why? Join us on the Decoder as we dive into the exclusive footage that documents this tragic crime, the murder of Anggy Diaz.
The person accused of killing her is her own husband.
Gruesome scene at best.
The two had only been married a few months.
Many describing her as a young and caring woman who was always smiling. Co-workers say she'll be dearly missed.
Today, new surveillance video is coming to light showing what Dicus was doing the day that his wife's body was found.
The family tells me they're so grateful for the community's support and outpouring of love. They say they hope to get her body back to Nicaragua, where she will be laid to rest.
And tonight, it's where those who knew her best gathered for a somber remembrance.
In the center is Anggy Diaz's bike, which she would ride each day from her house to the meat market where she worked. Danny Diaz says this is the worst thing that could happen to a mother.
This case takes us to the rural outskirts of Magnolia, Texas. Named for the beautiful magnolia trees in the area, it's 45 miles northwest of Houston, and it was a dry city until 2011, when the sale of alcohol was made legal. As a small, relatively peaceful place, any violent crime would rock the community to its core, and the Dicuses never expected to be at the heart of a horrifying turn of events. When Rodney and Lynn Dicus called the police, it didn't take them long to arrive. They'd been to the Dicus property before, and they knew the family well. Rodney, Lynn, and their sons, Wayne and Jared. Wayne was 25, and Jared was 21. But none of their previous dealings with the family could prepare the first responders for what they'd find in the small property around the back of the house.
I could see into the house, the front door was open. There looked to be like a towel on the floor and pink socks from what I could originally see. As I began to step up the steps, I could see underneath the towel there looked like blood.
The medical first responder hesitated on the scene, not wanting to contaminate a possible crime scene.
Because we had no information, didn't know what had happened. Had she committed suicide with a shotgun? What we were walking into. There was a desk immediately to the right of me when I walked in the door. Looked like it had a computer on it, and as I looked around the desk, I could see her feet. Stepped in further, and I could see the rest of the body, and then I realized the patient did not have a head.
The paramedics backed off. This wasn't a patient. This was a dead body, and the house was indeed a crime scene. So now it was the cops' turn.
She was just decapitated. She's got stab wounds to her back. Her head's in the bathtub.
The floor of the main room was covered in blood. Angie's body lay there, headless, surrounded by cigarette butts and blood-stained clothes. The murder weapon, a blood-stained knife, also lay by her body, and the police followed bloody footprints from the bedroom into the bathroom, where they found the most gruesome sight of all, Angie's cut-off head in the bathtub. Angie's husband, 21-year-old Jared, was on the scene, and the cops took him into custody immediately. There seemed no question he was in some way involved in his wife's death. At the very least, he knew about it, according to his mom.
He told me it happened this morning.
Who told you?
Jared.
Okay.
And he has been acting really strange lately.
Strange behavior didn't necessarily add up to a murder, but it wasn't a good sign. They asked Jared's brother, Wayne, about Angie.
Wayne, can we visit for a second? I got a question when you got time. Miss Angie, do you know what her last name was before she and your brother got married?
What's Angie's last name? Do you know? Her maiden last name? I don't know.
Okay, how about a date of birth?
Here's her phone.
Here, let me see.
Let me.
It's all
go
in
ahead.
Spanish, so I don't know.
Yeah. I don't want to touch this either here. So, I don't want fingerprints on it. Like, you know.
Okay.
Anyways.
That's all you know about her?
Yeah, I just know she worked over there. I know she was not
Where'd
here.
she work?
Chepis Meat Market.
The Cheppies?
That's where they met, yeah. I know she's here, you know.
Did she still work at Cheppies?
Yeah. I know she's not really a legal citizen, you know.
I'm
just saying.
I don't care.
No, I don't care either. I mean,
okay.
She's family, man.
Okay.
This questioning disturbed the family.
Are we all suspects?
No, ma'am. This is just standard.
Oh, this is just so nothing gets out, because we've already had somebody pull up here.
Yes,
we've already got people pulling up that have already heard about it. So that's what we're just trying to prevent anything else from getting out so we can do a proper investigation.
They weren't suspects, not the way Jared was, sitting in the back of the police cruiser with his hands cuffed. He knew the cop who came to talk to him already.
Jared, would you mind giving me the passcode to your phone? It's supposed to be a 6-digit code.
For now, they just needed procedural details, like Angie's date of birth and an ID for her body. And these cops, who knew the Dicuses so well, were still shell-shocked by what they'd found.
But when I heard possible VOA at 2060 Apollo, I thought it was
This guy does, like,
the brother that's sitting up front of the carport. I just figured he'd OD. Yeah, I didn't think this other one would be involved.
Jared's older brother, Wayne, had a history of using meth. This was why he'd had brushes with law enforcement in the past, starting in 2018 when he was just 20. But it wasn't Wayne sitting in the back of the police cruiser today. It was Jared, who was barely old enough to drink. Born in 2001, Jared had lived in the Houston area all his life. He'd attended Waller High School, where he'd played football. As the cops' comments showed, he seemed to be an ordinary kid. He was responsible, and he seemed to care deeply about his troubled older brother. Jared worked as an electrician, and apparently Wayne had once stolen some copper wire from him. Jared called the police on him, but later he seemed to regret doing so. It was clear Wayne's drug use caused strain in the family, and if they expected anyone to do something drastic, it would have been Wayne, not Jared, who'd met Anggy Diaz purely by accident at the Chepis Meat Market in 2022 where she worked, a chance meeting that seemed like fate. Anggy was born in October 2001 in Nicaragua. Her biological mom was a single mother, raising Anggy and her siblings alone and having to work to support them. At times, she would leave Anggy and her other kids with her sister while she worked in Costa Rica, sending money back home.
I arrived. Well, we came back from Costa Rica. We return every few months to see our children. We work, and then we go back again.
She would go and come back months at a time and come back to see her kids.
She was a dedicated mother, and she passed that dedicated, hard-working attitude on to Anggy. Anggy was an ambitious young woman with an academic mindset. She studied accounting at the National Autonomous University of Nicaragua at León while living with her adoptive mother. Her biological mother by this point had gone to the U.S. to work, leaving her kids behind for a more stable existence. But when Anggy was 18, her aunt, almost her adoptive mother by this point, was diagnosed with cancer, and her biological mom paid to bring her and her brothers across the Mexican border into the U.S. as undocumented immigrants. She arrived in Texas and took a job as a cashier at the meat market while also promoting her skills as a personal trainer on her social media. She seemed to be happy in her life and excited to see where it would go while sending money back for her aunt's cancer treatments. She shared posts in Spanish that said things like, "Celebrate your own victories because no one else understands what it took for you to achieve them." Angie's mother was wary of her ambition.
I was living in an apartment with them, the same place I've always lived. I went to pick her up because that's where they handed her over to me, the person who brought her. Then we lived in Houston. And what worried her the most was that she came with dreams. She immediately wanted to work. She wanted us to start working right away to pay things off, to handle everything. But I told her to have patience and to take her time. I was working and I told her that God would provide work, that things would come in time, but we only had one car and that made things difficult.
But Angie was adamant. She wasn't going to work the cash desk for long. No, Angie had ambitions and a bright future. She figured Jared into this future as soon as she met him. As a former football player, he came across as exciting and impressive, as she fell head over heels for him. Their social media posts together were full of devotion. They got married in October 2022, around the time of Angie's 21st birthday. It was a whirlwind romance. According to one of Angie's closest friends, she'd previously been dating a man called Jose and had been planning to marry him in the U.S.
Does she know what happened with that? Can she tell us what that relationship?
He says, "Can you let me know? Can you tell me? What is the relationship like?"
Well, what she told me was that yes, everything was fine, but in the end, she was going to marry her former boyfriend.
She said everything was good, and she was gonna get married to the ex, Law.
Well, I told her that afterwards I would help her with the preparations and everything. Then suddenly she said she wasn't going to get married anymore. And suddenly we understand what happened because she is no longer going to comply.
She said that she told her and that she was going to help her out with the decoration and so forth and this and that to help her out. And then all of a sudden she told her she was not going to get married.
After she said she wasn't going to get married, she gave a reason.
Yes, she told me, and I asked her, but why? If she was so happy that she was going to get married, and she told me no, that the boyfriend had changed, he had become very distant, he wasn't paying attention to her. And well, I advised her a lot because I'm a bit older than her. So I advised her and told her that if she didn't feel good with him, it would be better to end the relationship. Because why would she marry him if they no longer understood each other?
When Jose's personality had changed towards Angie, she got cold feet and broke off the engagement. This was around the same time that she met Jared. Jared, the All-American varsity football player, the pinnacle of her ambitions in Texas.
When did you meet Jared?
I don't know exactly when, but, well, I don't know the exact day, but I know they had already been talking for months.
She don't know exactly when, but
he would bring her roses and little gifts. Since we didn't see each other very often, whenever we did, we'd catch up on everything. She'd tell me about her job, and I'd tell her about mine. She would always say he was really sweet to her. She even showed me once when he brought her roses to work. And I thought, oh, how sweet. Everything seemed so perfect in the beginning.
She said everything at the beginning was real nice. She showed her a picture where he had bought flowers. And that's when Angie told her that she was going to get married.
Angie and her mother weren't on such good terms by this stage, maybe because of the conflicts between what Angie wanted to achieve and what her mother thought was possible. Angie was living with her aunt in Waller instead of with her mom in Houston.
Did Angie tell her about getting married to Jared?
La pregunta es, Angie le dijo que se iba a casar. Never.
Even if the two weren't close, it seemed strange that Angie wouldn't share her marriage with her mom. After all, she'd come to the U.S. to be with her, as well as to earn money and make a life there. Perhaps she wanted to keep her new life separate from her old one, believing it would be so much better, a fresh start. But the couple's idyllic posts on social media hid a darker side to their relationship.
What time of year was it?
Maybe a month or two after they started dating? No. Actually, they had probably been together for more than 6 months as a couple. Then she had an accident, and they wanted to deport her. I imagine they rushed their wedding. I told her that it would be better for them to take their time, to really get to know each other, because rushing into something like that wasn't right. I advised her to set boundaries with him, to make sure he respected her, and not to take things lightly. I had seen many similar cases with other friends when I lived there, women who ended up suffering abuse and mistreatment. That's why I gave her advice, because I wanted the best for her.
She's saying she had an accident, and she believes that they were trying to deport her, and that was one of the reasons why they got married quickly.
A rapid marriage could be a sign of true love or a hastily made mistake. Anggy was desperate to stay in the U.S., where she was building a life for herself. She had friends, family, and a job here now. She couldn't just leave, and Jared represented the ideal way to stay. Her uncle, who she briefly lived with, advised against making any rash decisions.
One thing I clarified with her is that you doing it for feelings or for documents, okay? I'm being straight up with both of you. And I told her, because I don't want you to get married because of documents or just to legalize yourself. Because that's not gonna be any good for you. It's not gonna work. Do it because they're feelings, because you love him and he loves you back. No, we're doing it because of feelings. I love him a lot, and he loves me.
She said she loved Jared, that her marriage was a real marriage, and she wasn't rushing into anything. Her uncle agreed to be a witness, and they got married. When Anggy introduced Jared to her friends, all of whom were Spanish-speaking, it didn't go so well.
There were little things that maybe at the time I didn't really notice. But looking back now, analyzing everything and talking with my husband that day, I started to see them. That night, I bought some beers to share, and he was drinking. I noticed that he would get irritated because we were all Hispanic, and he only spoke English. He seemed frustrated that he couldn't understand us, and I could see that she would get nervous, constantly translating for him.
They gave him the nickname Rojo, which means red in Spanish, because of his red hair. He couldn't or wouldn't engage in their communication, and sometimes he would leave these gatherings without a word of warning, irritated he couldn't understand. He felt alienated from his wife and her friends.
After she got married?
Yes.
After she got married, they became very distant.
It was not only Angie's friends, but her boss too, who noticed how her behavior changed after she got married.
It feels like a dream, a nightmare. Ruth Almendares, who worked with Diaz, says she considered Anggy to be like a daughter, adding that it was here where she met her husband, Jared Dicus. It wasn't until Anggy got married that several co-workers noticed she started to seem unhappy.
She became more withdrawn and nervous at work in the meat market, and Jared came to the counter looking for her constantly. Then, on January 10th, the day before Angie's murder, she came into work, and her boss immediately knew that something was up.
So I asked. They told me, look, talk to Anggy.
And then Tuesday.
When I got there on Tuesday, I asked, what happened with Anggy? But at first I thought they were going to bring up some kind of work-related issue. Then they told me, no.
She said that her brother had told her, you need to talk to Anggy, and she was thinking that she might have got a complaint from her.
Anggy doesn't look well. Something's wrong with her. She came in on Tuesday, sometime between 1 and 1:30.
Anggy didn't look right, didn't seem right. She went and spoke and hung out with Anggy, and they spoke. That's what she noticed, the bruising.
Anggy had come into work with a bruise on her shoulder, and it didn't seem to be from a random accident. No, she told another coworker something startling that same day.
So I took the opportunity to stay with her for a while and asked, hey, what's wrong? What happened to you? There was another coworker in the kitchen, Erica.
Erica was there.
And that's when she told us she was going to separate from him.
She told her and Erica that she was going to separate.
She told both of us that she was leaving him and that she would never get married again. I asked her, was it really that bad? Has it been that terrible for you? Why? That's when I got closer, lifted her shirt a little and told her, you can't let this keep happening.
That's when she got close and they floated to the side.
But she didn't just infer that Jared had hit her.
She told me more things that same day, but after that, I went home and we didn't talk again. We were supposed to go out for coffee on Friday because she didn't work that day. She had the afternoon off. She told me she wanted to talk to me because at work, at the register, she couldn't say much. There were always people around. That was Tuesday afternoon when she told me this. And you know, it's a shame that at the register there are no microphones, just cameras. We checked the footage and you can see us talking, but you can't hear what she told me. I had wanted that recording as proof of what she said. When we saw the bruises, we asked her, what happened to you? She said they had been arguing all night. That's why she looked so bad on Monday.
She checked the video footage where they were talking, but there was no audio, so she was trying to get the audio and the video and bring it to you.
Does she know how Anggy got that bruise?
When you saw those bruises, did Anggy tell you how that happened to her?
She said they had been arguing all night. And that was the reason she looked really bad on Monday, because that was Sunday. She went to the movies on Monday. She looked bad because she hadn't slept all night and hadn't been allowed to sleep.
They had been arguing on Sunday night, and she got no sleep. She said she was taking a shower, and they'd been arguing. And then when she got out of the shower, she was assaulted by the husband.
And for what reason? Did he say he hit her?
Who?
The husband. Why?
Supposedly, she had gone out with her aunt on Sunday.
Because she had gone out with her aunt, and he didn't want her to go with anybody, not even her aunt.
This seemed to be a breaking point for Anggy and the supposedly happy couple.
She said she wasn't going to live the way he wanted her to live. And the reason again, because she had gone out with her aunt. And then she said, well, she had told her that she was going to separate. She wasn't going to live the way she was living.
So she told him that she wanted to separate him, or she just told? So she didn't technically tell him that she was moving out. She told him she wasn't going to live like that and told her, I'm going to leave him.
But the real question is, did she tell her husband for sure?
Yes.
She said yes, she told her husband also.
Jared was in a volatile place going into 2023. In November, he'd been arrested for driving while intoxicated. The police had been called on him because he was acting aggressively towards people working in a local Whataburger restaurant. When the police arrived, he refused to calm down, and he was taken into custody. He punched windows and had to be placed in a restraint chair so the police could take a blood sample for DNA. In January 2023, he was out on bond for this crime, and his erratic behavior hadn't stopped. Anggy didn't tell Jared's mom, Lynn, that she was scared of Jared, but her behavior said otherwise.
Also, the last week, he's been wanting to stay in the house.
With y'all?
Yes. And not out there with her. And he asked if they could move back in there. So I thought that was odd. After he had just, spent all the money to fix it up. I don't understand why he didn't want to stay there anymore. It was all very strange. It's been like a week.
Anggy had requested that Jared stop sleeping in the same house as her. This wasn't the request of a couple living in domestic bliss. No, something was seriously wrong between the two of them. Just before midnight on January 8th, 3 days before Angie's murder, the Waller County Police Department received a strange call.
Waller County 911.
Yes, this is Jared Dicus.
Hello?
Yes.
Waller County, go ahead.
I did a little bit of drugs and I need help. I'm at 360 College Boulevard.
Okay, and what's the problem?
I just don't feel well.
Okay, and you said you took drugs?
No, ma'am. I'm completely sorry. I don't know why I called.
Okay, but do you need an ambulance or no? Are you good?
I need an ambulance.
The dispatcher sent paramedics to his location, but a few minutes later he called again, saying the same thing.
I did some drugs yesterday, and I don't feel well. And I didn't do any drugs. I don't know. I'm sorry.
When the paramedics got to him, they took him into hospital. He'd been using methamphetamine, his older brother's drug of choice. This devastated his parents.
He kept saying that he was on meth. And then you would start grilling him about it, and then he would say, I'm not on meth. I just told you that. But we had some experience with meth use, me and the wife. Not personal experience, but we had some experience going through family members on meth and dealing with them in the past, and it's horrible. It's awful. You and I have had this conversation before.
That was your other son.
That was my other son. And when Jared told us a couple of days ago that he was using meth now, that he had gone and gotten meth, and that's what was wrong with him, it just broke my heart, because that's the son that didn't do that stuff. Okay, he wasn't a perfect kid. He had some problems with alcohol. Not problems with alcohol, but when he would go out with his friends or something, that was a problem, because he would drink too much.
Right.
But on a day-to-day basis, he didn't drink. I mean, when he had to work, he didn't mess around. He wasn't. But when he was off, the party was on. You know, it was okay to party.
Where Anggy was during all of this wasn't clear, but the night of this 911 call was the same night she said he'd hit her, the Sunday before her death. Had he been acting under the influence of substances? And was it those same substances that would drive him to kill his 21-year-old wife? On January 11th, Jared had returned from work at around 4 in the morning. He went into his house around the back of his parents' property, and they didn't see him again until 12:30 p.m. that day. When he did come back to their house, his mom, Lynn, heard an unfamiliar phone ringing.
And we noticed that he had a phone that didn't look right. And what I mean by that is it didn't look like it was his phone. So we started questioning him about the phone. We didn't. Lynn started questioning him about the phone. And she finally got him to pull his phone out of his pocket, his front pant pocket. And it wasn't his phone. And she's like, whose phone is that? That's not your phone. No, I have multiple phones.
But she knew that wasn't true, so she asked to see it. When he brought it out, she found that the phone's language was in Spanish.
She said, that looks like Angie's. And that's when we jumped up, and I said, oh my God, what's going on? And we ran out there. And that's when we called. That's when I called 911.
Immediately, she knew it had to be Angie's. Anggy usually kept her phone with her, and worried by their son's erratic behavior, Lynn and Rodney went over to the house to check on her.
I know this part is difficult, but when you went out, both you and your wife run out there? Okay, and there's only one entrance, and that's the front, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so when you walked in there, what did you see?
I opened the door and I walked in, and you couldn't see anything, and I took a step in, and I saw him laying on the floor. And that's when I told my wife, I said, you don't want to come in here, and she came in. And I said, call 911, and I knew she wasn't going to be able to. Okay. I grabbed my phone and I started calling.
Where was Jared at that time?
He was in the house, laying in the floor crying.
In Jared and Angie's house, they'd found Angie's murdered body, and they did the only thing they could. They called 911 on their own son. Not only was Jared the likely suspect because he was the victim's husband, he had also been documented as acting strangely and sometimes violently, and he was in possession of Angie's phone. For these reasons, he was taken into custody. The police's working theory was that this was the final culmination of escalating tension in their relationship. She'd wanted to leave him, and he'd killed her rather than allowing her to do so. But first, they sat down to interview him.
So, it's my understanding you were just in the hospital, is that right?
Yes, and after that I started feeling weird.
What were you in the hospital for?
Okay. Because of our substance.
What was it? Meth, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that something you use a lot, or just dabble, or? Okay.
Sorry.
Until recently?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you used again since then? Okay. Meth or something different? Okay.
A possible defense narrative began to present itself. Jared claimed he'd never used meth before that final Sunday, just a few days before Angie's death. Had it acted on him to change his behavior, make him lose control?
Do you want to tell me what happened?
Jared's long silence here was almost more telling than the answer might have been. Of course, he had the right to remain silent, but his body language was full of stress.
And it's a matter of how and what your mindset was, what your thought process was, what caused it. Did she make you mad? What happened?
Did you love her?
Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. His answer wasn't clear, and he wasn't being cooperative.
What time did you get home from work? 5. Was she awake or was she asleep? Do you not know or are you just refusing the answer?
I'm just refusing the answer.
Okay.
Did she do something bad to you or something? Did she deserve that? Something
Just to control.
Police investigators have a number of different methods they use to try to get a suspect to talk. Here, they appealed to the helplessness of his situation and the tragedy of his wife's death, hoping to see some remorse.
This isn't going to go away. I'll tell you that. You can stonewall us if you want to. There's a lot of people that are brokenhearted tonight. Your family, her family, and it's not going away. And you caused that. And the only way to give anybody closure and ease some of the pain is to take accountability and tell us what happened. And
This got through to Jared, but not in the way that they'd hoped it would.
I did drugs and I was up for like 2 weeks. I just forgot who I lived in the city was. Accused her. Lost my way. I just want to get out of there. I'm very sorry. Sorry, I failed you.
Help us understand. Tell us why you're sorry. Tell us what occurred for this tragic ending to happen. What happened? What was going on?
Just drugs, man. You gotta stay away from drugs.
Well, I understand that. So you did it, and tell us what happened after you did it.
Drugs just make you go crazy. It makes you really sad.
He was implying that he'd done it, but they needed him to admit it outright. Then he said something startling.
saying I'm sorry but refusing to talk and take ownership of what you did, that's not good enough.
I just lost my way. I lost my way with God.
That's clear. We're not asking for generalities, and we're not asking about your personal relationship with God. Obviously, it's a struggle. It's a struggle for everybody. That's not a question. Nobody has a perfect relationship with Him. But we're going to ask you one last time what happened. And if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But your opportunity to have any kind of looking like a good guy of this is what I did and I'm sorry and I can't believe I did it, that door is closing on you.
Look, I didn't do it.
You can't even keep a straight face, buddy.
Jared made a cursory attempt at denying it, like he felt like he ought to try. And he laughed. Laughed at how ridiculous it was to say it hadn't been him. Laughed also at his predicament. Maybe laughed at what he'd done to Angie. But this was no laughing matter. He began to talk about a voice he'd heard, something on his TV screen.
What did it force you to do to her? What did it force you to do your wife? It forced me. To what?
To kill her.
Why? What did it tell you to do to her? Did it tell you how to kill her?
Yes.
So how did you kill her? Tell us how you killed her.
I don't know, because it wasn't Jared. It wasn't Jared.
He admitted he'd killed her, but claimed he didn't remember how, that he'd been disassociated from himself at the time. But this wasn't true. He did remember.
Let me tell you, what did you do?
What you saw.
What did I see? Tell me what I saw. I'm asking you.
Cut her head off. That's what it did do.
And made you cut her head off.
Jared was finally cracking under the pressure. He admitted that Anggy had been awake when he got home from work in the early hours, and that they'd talked. This part at least seemed true. If Jared had been violent with Anggy before, it seemed reasonable that she'd grab a weapon to protect herself when they started arguing. Little did she know that this would be a fateful mistake, and that that same knife would be used against her.
Did you cut her head off while she was still alive? Yes. There were other stab wounds on her body. Did you do that after you cut her head off? Or before?
Oh. Before or afterwards, just said.
You just told me before. Why did you put her head in the bathtub?
You told me.
Her hair was wet. How come? Did you turn the shower on?
Yes.
To wash yourself, or to wash her hair, or what?
To wash.
Though Jared stated he'd been in some sort of fugue when he killed Anggy, he'd still had the presence of mind to try and clean himself up, to cover the tracks of his crime. This apparent lack of control was a lie.
Did you have plans on hurting your mom or your dad when you went over to their house? There were no voices that told you to hurt them?
There's voices that tell me to shoot myself.
To shoot yourself? Why didn't you? Where was the gun? You weren't gonna hurt your parents. So you could control that. You could control not hurting them.
If he could stop the voices from making him kill his parents, why couldn't he stop them from making him kill Anggy? There was no explanation as to why, but it raised questions about his reasoning for the attack. Here the interview terminated. He was left alone in the interview room, and his body language was as telling as it had been earlier. He curled up on the floor in the fetal position, as if to comfort himself in the extremes of his guilt. But he hadn't shown this guilt earlier that day. In fact, he'd been caught on CCTV in the meat market where Anggy worked, where the couple had first met, at 12:49 p.m., walking casually towards the fridges to get a beer. He'd killed his wife only 8 hours earlier, and here he was stealing a beer from her workplace as if to celebrate. He walked straight past the counter and opened it in the parking lot. Then he drove home, where his crime would unravel, and under threat of exposure, he would begin to panic. And he was guilty. Worse, his whole family knew it. Even on that first 911 call, his father had cried about how this could have been prevented.
Oh my God, please hurry. There's something wrong with my son. Oh my God, I told him in the hospital to keep him. Oh my God, I told him that. I told him that 2 days ago to keep him.
His father seemed to believe that something was wrong with his son to cause him to do this. And indeed, Jared's mental competency became an issue during his prosecution. But a court-ordered evaluation of his mental faculties found that he was competent to stand trial. and so he pleaded guilty to Angie's murder. As part of his agreement, he waived all rights to appeal the verdict. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison in August 2024. But why did he do it? He claimed it was a drug-induced psychotic break, and he did test positive for cocaine and marijuana, though not amphetamines. But their rushed marriage, Angie's vulnerable dependence on him as her way out of getting deported, and suggestions of abuse all implied that this awful killing wasn't just out of the blue. She had her whole life ahead of her, full of ambition, and it was ended in the crazed attack of a single morning.
We want to honor Angie. Queremos honrar a Angie. And we want to celebrate her life today.
Remembering Anggy Diaz with music, prayer, and memories of the 21-year-old who was killed January 11. Her family coming to terms with her murder. She didn't deserve to die like this, a pastor said. Her aunt shared a few words, saying she was an angel sent by God who touched everyone she met with her contagious joy and smile. She says those who met her will forever hold a piece of her in them. Angie's death was tragic. Her family has said they have no room for hate in their hearts.
But the reality is that bad things do in fact happen to good people.
The family says they're thankful for the community's outpouring of support during this difficult time for them. Incredible is how they describe it.
Una luz bella, bella.
A beautiful light is how they'll remember her.
Para nosotros no es un adiós.
They say it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later when they meet again.
What do you think about this tragic story? Why did he do it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, keep up with our channel, and we'll see you very soon on The Decoder.